This is a podcast by the Business Times, presented by UOB.
The global banking landscape has undergone a major transformation thanks to technology, and nowhere has the impact of digital banking been more significant than in the ASEAN region. In fact, Asia-Pacific leads the world in digital payment adoption. Let's find out how else digital banking is driving regional connectivity. For more insights, we're speaking to Henry Choi, Group Head, Group Retail Tomorrow at UOB. I'm Howie Lim, and this is BT Podcasts by the Business Times. Henry, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
First up, tell us, Henry, how does digital banking specifically drive regional connectivity in the ASEAN region?
So I think everyone believes digital bank is growing very fast in ASEAN, and I wouldn't doubt on that. So in some of the reports I can share, the law report basically mentioned for Asia Pacific, digital banking take up 2/3 of the global wallets. And nowadays, many people don't use cash. And I would say the COVID was an accelerator to make this happen. I would say another thing is it depends on the maturity of the countries. And ASEAN, the interesting thing is the technology is not bad. Even though from a GDP standpoint, a lot of the countries in ASEAN, even excluding Singapore, they may not be so rich. But the smartphones are having a very high penetrations. And hence it also enables digital banking to be quite successful. And it also means a lot of the global players, including UOB, it would be quite difficult to really compete in the countries outside Singapore. You think about Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, or Vietnam, so big, right? If we have to open so many branches physically to compete, basically it's not possible from a cost standpoint.
Yeah.
But this digital banking thing, the mobile app, make us in the same level playing ground, and we can then drive changes faster together with the local competitors. And at the end, we help the society and the economy.
Are there other factors, though, that contributed to this rapid adoption of digital banking in ASEAN? Because you also mentioned that everyone's growing at a different pace.
Yeah.
And there was also COVID that helped accelerate everything. Correct. What else?
The other thing is the energy. I would say ASEAN is full of young people. Of course, globally, we always say it's aging population. Yeah. But you zoom into ASEAN, I would say half of the population will be very young and very digital savvy, right? And they are very open relatively to digital first banking concept. But I would also bear in mind, I always joke on that, right? So don't exclude the so-called senior citizens or elderly, because you ask yourself, when you get old, will you still use the internet? The answer is yes. So it's a gradual changes. So we all believe that all this digital banking trend will only go forward rather than backward. But ASEAN is easier because the catalyst of the younger population is taking up a bigger space. The other thing is mobile phone penetration. I mentioned already, right? The smartphones, right? Thanks to the technology and different brands, it may not be always the expensive model. In fact, most digital banks actually allow the app to be downloaded to a wider models, OS, operating systems, and hence it's also a very important requirement to penetrate so deep. Compared to the older days, if you talk about branches, actually there's a middle stage of internet banking. But at that time, so-called a lot of the outside the city, meaning outside the capital cities, the people living a bit outskirt, they may not be rich enough to really have the internet coverage and or the laptop, right? But now mobile phone actually make everything ready and enabled and allow the banks like us in UOB to really drive the growth and help the economy to grow further.
You mentioned these larger countries like Indonesia and Vietnam, some of them underbanked though there. Correct, yeah. So how does digital banking help to include them, enhance financial inclusion, especially in rural areas?
Yeah, I think I can re-emphasize some of the points, right? You think about that in the past, actually in all industry, I wouldn't say banking. If you choose to go to Indonesia, you will pick Jakarta, the big cities, right? You go to China, you take Beijing, Shanghai, Thailand, you pick Bangkok. Not that we don't want to grow outside, but it's about the efficiency and the scale, right? And if we need human being, we need physical branches, it will always be very slow to achieve the level of efficiency and scale. But mobile apps basically change the whole world. And it also allows us to really help and actually partner with the government to think about how to help the so-called underserved or underbanked population. Of course, we have the risk appetite and concern and make sure we comply with regulations. But I would say in ASEAN, actually half of the population may be living outside the so-called main cities. With all the points that we have discussed, we actually allow these population to have access to the financial industry. And this is something I think we are doing the right thing for the country. And actually most of the governments and central banks are aligned and really helping us to really push this agenda.
Let's talk about SMEs, small companies. They face challenges. What are they in ASEAN? Because even though there are these advancements in digital banking and all of that, they face issues. Well, they always face issues, be it like cash flow issues and so on and so forth. They just can't play with the bigger boys.
Okay. SMEs play a very, very important role in ASEAN. When I say important, I emphasize so much is SME actually take up a lot of the role in creating job opportunities for the citizens in all the countries, including ASEAN, of course, right? But it's the chicken and egg thing, right? If the SME cannot really borrow money, cannot access to the financial services well, then they are limiting their growth and hence limiting their employment. And employment will lead to, a lot of social problems and a lot of economic growth. So I always see banks play a role to help the country economy, and SME is the anchor point, right? So traditionally, SMEs, the challenge would be they're not so big.
Yeah.
They may not be really well trained in all the financials. They may not have all the connectivities, right, to the buyers, suppliers, not to mention about getting the loans from the bank. It will be quite challenging for them in the past, right? And banks also have to worry because we have shareholders. We also have concern from other factors that we don't want to give the money to the one that having trouble. Then it runs into a bit of inefficiency. It's a trust issue. I don't want to give you the money, but you don't have money, you cannot grow. Then you cannot employ more people. You cannot innovate for the countries. Why digital bank then change the whole world this way? And it's really, really meaningful for the bank in a positive way. Not just for the bank, but I would say also for the SME and for the economy. It's actually it's an ecosystem. If you look at your mobile phone, right? Honestly speaking, if I can accompany you for 24 hours, look at all your mobile phone data, I will know you better than you know yourself. Partly a joke, but partly also true, right? So I can know where you browse, what you buy, your friends, your connectivities. SMEs, there's one concept that UOB is believing in, and I personally also believe in it. By itself, it may not be strong. But if I know your surrounding things, meaning who is your buyer, who is your supplier, your cash flow, who you connect with, basically I know a wider ecosystem to make the decisions of how I can support you better. Right timing, what and how to offer. So in a way, in the longer term, when digital banking is stronger and we have all the data connected to each other, bearing in mind the privacy law and also other concerns from the cultural standpoint, if we really reach a stage that I can understand the SME client better, then the bank can provide the most optimal solution to them, and naturally they will grow the best, right? And this is a balance of taking risks and also balancing the support of the economy.
We still have more questions though, Henry. What about the limitations of current cross-border payment services? What about regulatory harmonization? More with Henry Choi from UOB in a moment.
This episode of Future of Finance is presented by UOB. And now, back to our podcast.
We're speaking to Henry Choi, Group Head, Group Retail, Tomorrow at UOB. Henry, in what ways is UOB Tomorrow's app influencing, say, real-time fund transfers in the ASEAN region?
Okay, so first of all, we actually started this concept back in 2018 and we launched the first Tomorrow in 2019 in Thailand first. And then we gradually moved to Indonesia and cover all the other countries. And we focus on supporting the retail clients, meaning individuals.
Yeah.
And since 2023, with the help of all the technology and also support with the government and all the central banks, basically if you are from UOB Singapore, if you go to Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, our main 3 countries that we have exposure, you can use our app, the UOB Tomorrow app, to do real-time payment.
Oh,
so in
handy.
coffee shop or whatever. So I have colleagues, when I was in Indonesia and Thailand, when I have Singapore friends coming over, I would encourage them, why don't you open your UOB Singapore app? You can actually scan the QR code and then you can just pay the coffee or whatever real time. And it avoids a lot of FX, the small notes issue.
Yeah.
And it's really a breakthrough. And the convenience of that actually matched the UOB value and our focus, which is regional connectivity.
Right. What about cross-border QR payment services? What impact has the expansion of that had on trade and travel within ASEAN, Henry?
Trade, I would say, is a more medium term. But for travel, which is very much linked to individual, I think now is Christmas time coming, then a lot of people will travel. And actually, each country already somehow have established certain kind of digital payment. It may be QR, it may be something else, but QR is the most dominant ways of scanning and then pay, right? In convenience store, restaurants, even some of the, I would say, the malls or department stores. The issue is about cross-border and it's the convenience part, right? So one thing is, as a bank, we always try to cooperate and participate in any cross-border initiatives. We have already achieved the state that UOB Singapore customers can go to the other countries and scan the QR code to pay as they travel. And we'll continue to focus on this development. And I would say we are one of the first. And whether we'll do the reverse or we'll do more countries will be something I need to focus on. Work with the technology side and also the government. Because at the end, there will be some payment gateway at the back, which is a bit technical.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure the security is there, customer protection is there, as well as the convenience.
Is that the current limitations, though, to those cross-border payment linkages? The one you just mentioned, are there others?
There are some limitations.
Yeah.
First of all, we also need to protect the customers. While we're trying to grow fast and innovate fast, sometimes I have a big debate with people. Is it the technology that is limiting our growth? Or is it the culture, the behavior of the human? Or is it certain like legal or compliance issue, right? I think it's a mix of all. But recently when I chat with or when I discuss with some technology expertise, right? They're saying technology is already not a bottleneck. It's about education, about making sure we are ready to adopt and embrace the technologies.
Okay.
Right? Don't forget, we are not only focusing on educated people. We want to make sure we serve the whole citizens, right? Or the whole population in ASEAN. And they're at different stage of maturity. So we need to make sure when we try to support all these, we need to make sure at the back end, our customer service is there. And also any so-called illegal, fraudulent money laundering, the bank is also protecting the country and protecting the citizens and the customers. So we need to move at a pace that makes sense to the government, to the customers, as well as to the culture of the relevant countries. So I would say these are the limitations that over time we will slowly progress.
So protecting against bad actors, that regulatory harmonization, so to speak, in order for the full potential of digital banking to help with regional connectivity, how? It's
a tough question though. But recently we also realized there are always discussions, be it formal or informal forums among the central banks, particularly in ASEAN. So ASEAN, in a way, we learn from the Europe, the EU, and we want to see whether we can actually have some benefits if we bring all the ASEAN countries together. Sometimes it will be plus, meaning plus other countries outside the ASEAN in Asia Pacific or the wider Asia. The cross-recognition of, let's say, authentication. Can I really confirm how it is you? So that when you are outside Singapore, you don't have to go through all the hassle of re-authentication and provide all the information. Can we speed up some of that, right? And so if I go to outside Singapore, go to Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, is it possible? But we need to make sure we find a balance again. Same point, right? It's the customer protection versus innovation versus convenience. How we really maneuver around all these factors. And at the end, I think it's a journey rather than a black and white decisions day one.
Where do you think you are on this journey?
We are trying to be a pioneer as well. And we try to drive the discussions with, let's say, MAS. We also have exposure in Thailand, so we will talk to Bank of Thailand and also OJK in Indonesia and so on and so forth, and Bank Negara in Malaysia. The good thing is UOB really has footprints in the major part of the ASEAN. So as we work together in the bank, among all the countries, we then have the influence to the partners, including the governments. So I hope that is where we can contribute to the world, in ASEAN especially, by lobbying, discussing, proposing or recommending the solutions around that. So it's ongoing. But the breakthrough may come at the right time. The small step you can say is at least Singapore customers going to Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, they can buy coffee without any nooks, right? They can just use the app, which is the Singapore app, by the way, not the app from the other countries. And they can already complete the transactions risk-free and really convenient.
Wish we had more time, Henry. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
No problem. Thank you so much.
I'm Howie Lim. This has been BT Podcasts from the Business Times.
This episode of Future of Finance was presented by UOB. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.